Hello and welcome back to Watching Brief, or rather, I suppose, hello, I'm back on Watching Brief. It has been a few episodes, a couple of months since I was able to comfortably record these pertinent news conversations with my wonderful co-host, Andy Brockman. And indeed, he has been the primary host of Watching Brief for the past few episodes. Thank you for carrying that heavy burden, Andy.
That's okay. I'm feeling a lot less lonely today, I have to say.
Good. No, it's good to be back. But also, obviously, I've been there in spirit, editing all the way through, and I think we have discovered a new format. That is to say, for discrete news updates, essentially a format that does essentially clip off at around about 10 minutes for shorter form viewing. And so with that in mind, this week's episode is going to have that shape and form on, for example, TikTok, but on YouTube, we'll be hanging around to discuss and chew some of the fat after Andy has presented the facts, as it were, the facts, my lord, around this particular episode to do with Gunung Padang and Graham Hancock's assertions around that pyramidal shaped structure. So let's hear what Andy has to say.
Hello and welcome to the latest in our series of Watching Brief special news reports. This week it's really the only archaeological news in town, which is the retraction by academic publisher WILEY Online of the controversial article about the Gunung Padang hill extinct volcano pyramid in Java, Indonesia. The original article was published in October 2023 in the WILEY journal Archaeological Prospection, which deals with essentially archaeological geophysics and other remote sensing methods. And it controversially argued that the Gunung Padang hill, which is a well-known site in Indonesia, it's been investigated by archaeologists previously, showed evidence of human occupation and the first phase of construction at least 20,000 years ago, which isn't supposed to have happened. The conventional archaeology done by Indonesian archaeologists places the main construction at the site at around 2,200 years ago. Now, it just so happened that particular dating tied in with the views of the British journalist and writer Graham Hancock, who has controversially suggested that there was a global civilization that built major constructions like pyramids at various points in the world during this period, and its influence can still be seen today, but that conventional archaeology denies its existence. Now, when the paper was published, many archaeologists read it and immediately took issue with the conclusions, because essentially it was argued the authors of the paper, led by an Indonesian geologist, Danny Hillman, basically took dirt from a geological core, dated it, and then said, when it came back with a carbon date of around 22,000 BC, that it was down to human activity. Now, you can see the immediate problem there is that there was no proven correlation between the dating, the material that was being dated, and human artifacts. And essentially, they were dating dirt, they were dating geology, they weren't dating archaeology. As a result of the complaint, WILEY's investigated the article, which had passed peer review. Archaeological Prospection is a peer-reviewed journal. And this week, on the 18th of March, they published this retraction. It quotes the article's name and URL and so on, and then says, the above article published online on the 20th of October 2023 in WILEY's online library has been retracted by agreement between the journal editors-in-chief and John Wiley & Sons Limited. And then it goes on to say, following the publication of this article, concerns were raised by third parties with expertise in geophysics, archaeology, and radiocarbon dating about the conclusions drawn by the authors based on the evidence reported. The publisher and the co-editors-in-chief have investigated these concerns and have concluded the article contains a major error. This error, which was not identified during peer review, is that the radiocarbon dating was applied to soil samples that were not associated with any artifacts or features that could be reliably interpreted as anthropogenic, that is, man-made. Therefore, the interpretation that the site is an ancient pyramid built 9,000 or more years ago is incorrect, and the article must be retracted. Danny Hillman responded on behalf of the authors, all of whom disagree with the retraction. And in fact, in the last 24 hours, Graham Hancock himself has published correspondence relating to that investigation with Danny Hillman and the other authors, and questioning where they question the criticisms that were made of the article. The issue really has now descended into one of my experts disagree with your experts, and the supporters of Graham Hancock are arguing that this is yet another case of censorship and suppression by big archaeology. Proponents and supporters of the position taken by WILEY, on the other hand, say that this is a normal process of academic to and fro. The article was found to be based on a fundamental error. Any archaeologist publishing an article based on a fundamental error would expect to see that article retracted. Of course, what the investigation, and certainly what the press release to do with the investigation, doesn't explain is why the article got through a process of peer review in the first place. Because it's fair to say many archaeologists, including I think this one speaking to you now, read the paper and immediately picked up the issue that the authors hadn't proven any correlation between the dates they were coming back with and human activity. It's a story that's going to run and run, and I suspect we're going to be talking about this before not very long once again. Well, that was the Watching Brief news. Welcome to the Watching Brief discussion with me, Andy Brockman, and Marc Bartman-Astles of Archaeosoup Productions. All of this is made possible by our wonderful supporters on Patreon and our wonderful supporters who buy thePipeLine a Ko-fi or a beer, whichever way you want to look at it. We couldn't do the work that we do without your support. Please carry on supporting us, and please get your friends and colleagues to bung us a few quid from time to time as well. Please. We would really appreciate it.
Yep. So, it's really hard, isn't it? In all honesty, as human beings, you've done a very good job there in summing up that news story. But as human beings and archaeologists, it's hard not to have a little bit of joy at this occurring in the way that it did. Now, the
word you're looking for is Schadenfreude, isn't it?
Well, no, except I know I was being very specific. I nearly said Schadenfreude, because the crucial thing here is that Hancock, for my lifetime, essentially, has been seeking recognition and acceptance by so-called mainstream archaeologists of his theories and ideas. And here we have a crucial test case of a piece of evidence going up into publication, somehow getting through peer review, going in front of, in that sense, so-called mainstream archaeology and archaeologists and geologists, of course, crucially, and immediately having a problem because of the methodology. So the reason why I say joyful is that it's a joy to see Hancock get his day in that sort of, hall of peers and get that recognition, but also crucially have to play by the same rules that we play by. Have to actually have evidence, which is, as you pointed out, and as was pointed out in the quotes that you highlighted, evidence that is actually rooted in human activity and human behavior, as opposed to any number of geological processes that can send dirt down a crack into the heart of a great big porous mound. Crucially, no one's denying the human activity later on top of that mound. No. And that the 2,200 years ago, I think you were saying, but that's because there's evidence for that. So the joy here is the joy of the scientific method and the need for methodology that makes sense, that's repeatable, and that crucially is proving what you say it proves, i.e. is connected to human activity. I mean, what do you make of it? Because, undeniably, we have seen some slightly, slightly more People were speaking with more brevity, shall we say, on social media about this.
People talking on X Twitter.
Mm.
Look, I'm reminded. I mean, in terms of vindication, vindication's a word that's been used a lot in this. When the article was published, Graham Hancock used the word vindication in his tweet, welcoming it effusively.
Mm.
And I think that what we've got here is something that reminds me of possibly my favorite episode of Time Team, where
Is that the one on Shooter's Hill, where some weird local archaeologist shows people around? No, okay.
Not. No, that was really dodgy, and the conclusions were absolute rubbish. apart from the Bronze Age bit, which actually turned out to be early Iron Age. Okay. But thanks to dating, in fact. Thanks to scientific dating.
So what, evidence? And people had to change their minds based on evidence?
That's right.
So go on. Your favourite episode, go on.
No, and I think many people, I think I can't remember, it might even, I think it might have been Phil Harding's or even Mick Astor. And one of the Time Team compilations, one of the Time Team members cited it as their favourite episode, right, which is a Welsh site where all sorts of remarkable things were being reported, and the Time Team descended on it and managed to prove that, in fact, the whole thing was a setup. For example, you had an Iron Age sword, I think it was, with a piece of 20th century barbed wire overlaying it. So you can see there's an immediate problem with dating. Dating matters a lot in these things. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And basically, it was 50 minutes of the Time Team using scientific method to prove somebody almost certainly deliberately. They didn't name anybody, but obviously you watched the program, you had suspicions who was doing it.
Yeah.
But the site had been deliberately salted with an idea for attracting 15 minutes of fame on the telly or tourists or who knows.
Yeah.
But there were fake standing stones and all sorts of other things going on as well. Now, in this case, no one's accusing Danny Hillman and the authors of the paper or Graham Hancock of deliberately faking evidence.
Mm-hmm. No.
But what they have been shown to have done by a process of perhaps far too late investigation and effective peer review, very public peer review, actually, by the reactions to the paper, is that what was presented in a journal of record just didn't cut it. The claims that were being made, the evidence wasn't there to support them. And far from vindication of Graham Hancock's views, what was actually happening was a critique of Graham Hancock's views and essentially an argument that Mr. Hancock and his supporters were seeing what they wanted to see and interpreting it in the way that they wanted to interpret it, which isn't necessarily the one that's borne out by the evidence that everybody else would use.
Yeah. Well, and that's the heart of it. That was, I mean, I recall when you and I had a conversation with Bill Farley on this. We three. When shall we three meet again? At some point, we'll be meeting.
Please don't mention the Scottish play. It's really unlucky. Somebody like me don't be in my dodgy theatrical background. I care about things like that.
When we do three meet again, it would be interesting to follow up on this. But I remember at the time, we three all suggested and agreed that if the evidence was associated with human activity, and it wasn't a plant, then we would have to change our minds. That's the way the game works.
Absolutely.
And I think if anyone's watching this and is eager to, as we've seen elsewhere already, eager to sort of type out a sort of you guys just weren't ready for the evidence. It's been suppressed, as Hancock himself has suggested.
Help! I'm being suppressed. Come and see the violence.
If anyone is, then the simple threshold for demonstrating that that's not correct is to talk about the quality of the evidence, and in this instance, the quality of the evidence just simply wasn't there. In some ways, I remain eager to be shown proof of complex previously unfathomed ancient civilizations and visitations from other planets, even depending on which pseudo-archaeologist you're listening to on these things. But so far, there has been no actual evidence of that. Where do you think where do you think this leaves academic publishing, and perhaps more broadly its relationship to, I guess, an accessible discourse? Because I think I was saying to you before we started recording this, in this instance, what we've had here, in a way which is actually quite interesting, we've actually had Hancock's assertions coming into, as it were, our playing field. We've been able to actually meet him with rules that we all understand in place. But how did it get onto that playing field in the first place? And is that a good or bad thing? Because the second part of my question is that I was suggesting is really to do with accessibility. Arguably, in this instance, possibly Hancock has drawn a lot of eyes to an academic article, which has to be applauded. If people are looking to publish and have their assertions tested, that's good, isn't it? Surely.
I think there are a number of things that can be are coming out of this that are really good lessons to learn, both for obviously Mr. Hancock and his supporters, but also for archaeologists who engage with the media and engage with this kind of subject, and the wider public, and also for people in the media who write and report about this kind of subject. And I'll take them really sort of in order. One is that, first of all, you need to really see these things in the round. And I'll direct people to a Twitter thread by archaeologist Flint Dibble, who's another one of the people who've been front and center in critiquing Graham Hancock. One of the things that Flint states very strongly in a thread about this is that when the paper was first published, he reached out to Indonesian archaeologists, including two who appeared on a video on YouTube, which Flint produced. One is a PhD candidate called Harry Sofian, and another is Dr. Lutfi Yondri. Dr. Yondri has actually excavated at Gunung Padang and published a book about it in Indonesian, but is available as an open access download. Now, for some strange reason, and this discussion is had in the video, Dr. Lutfi Yondri was not cited in that paper. Now, it's Dr. Yondri who has come up with the more conventional dating of around about 2,000 years ago for human activity at Gunung Padang. So nobody's denying that there's archaeology there. Legitimate, reputable archaeologists have worked there and come up with evidence. What they haven't come up with is the kind of evidence that is being quoted in the paper that was published by WILEY in Archaeological Prospection. So, you have to ask, when you read something, particularly when it's something remarkable, what are the sources? How wide is the trawl of the sources? Are they quoting, all the sources they might? This wasn't obscure work that took place decades ago. It's almost contemporary.
Although what you're just talking about there is being a reader. That's once it's been published. Presumably, though, there's a question here about the peer review process that no one said, hang on, why haven't you cited this? Why haven't you looked at that? There are alternative ideas here. How are you weighing these against those? This kind of thing.
And in fact, over on Blue Sky, I was having this discussion with a colleague who was saying that actually peer review is reckoned to be known to be fallible, and perhaps more fallible than people would like to admit.
Yeah.
It's Retraction Watch, isn't it? That brilliant website that looks at articles that have been retracted from academic journals.
Yeah.
Which actually, I think this pops up. This is one of their latest stories.
Yeah. I'm a big fan. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to ask why that is. again, you hear reports, for example, that editors of journals have difficulty in getting people with appropriate experience to peer review, either because they're too busy, because they're not paid, and so on, or the expertise, the area is sometimes maybe so niche that there are so few people that would be capable of peer reviewing it. They're probably involved in writing the article in the first place. There's lots of ways this could go wrong.
Well, and attached to that, there's also the issue of the editing team, the editing team, knowing that what they're looking at requires additional, a few extra eyes on it with particular expertise. It can be fraught.
Yeah. On the other hand, you can say on this one, it was such a blatant error. It was an error written in neon lights. If somebody like me, who's not a specialist geophysicist, okay, I'm trained as an archaeologist, as a field archaeologist, I know what dating is for, I know roughly what methods you can use and so on.
And also how broadly speaking, how stratigraphy and geological processes work.
Absolutely. And if I'm on a site taking sampling for dating purposes, how closely you have to record it. You have to record it in 3 dimensions, where it's actually coming from, and so on and so on, what it's associated with, and so on and so on. Absolutely. So okay, someone with just some background, if I'd been given that paper, I would have put a blooming great red flag on that piece of evidence. So and other people far more qualified on than me picked it up straight away and complained to WILEY that something odd was going on here. And to their credit, WILEY did actually investigate it. As I say, what and I suspect we won't find out is how it came to be published in the first place. What the peer review process. Peer review of necessity is anonymized. And given that there could even be legal issues around this, unless some whistleblower makes public the process by which this article came to be published, I doubt we'll know the full mechanisms. And again, in saying that, I'm not suggesting anyone did anything illegal, unethical, or whatever.
No.
But an article that should never have got past the first review by an editor got through peer review and ended up being published, and is now pretty humiliating for the journal.
Well, but it's also immediately going to enter into the annals of this was suppressed evidence. This kind of thing.
Right. And again, I've got no evidence for saying this is what happened. But given that Mr. Hancock was so closely aligned with this paper, both through the Ancient Apocalypse TV series, where Gunung Padang was one of the major sites featured, on location, lots of lovely drone shots. It's very photogenic. But Mr. Hancock has been writing about his association with the work at Gunung Padang since 2014. If you go to his website, you'll see an article he wrote in 2014 talking about the work of Danny Hillman and his colleagues there, and the evidence they were coming up with. So the two sets of people inputting to that article are associated. Graham Hancock, his support is acknowledged in the paper, and put it no more strongly than this: if Graham Hancock was looking to find a case study in how big archaeology reacted to his work, and to set up a them and us situation, this has delivered it absolutely perfectly.
Well, and this leads into, I suppose, something which I know does concern you, and that is the extent to which the response goes. So, for example, it probably is enough to have it as a responsive process, and asking questions about the peer review process, and it's talking about publishing, I suppose, is what I'm saying. But we are at risk of a bit of Schadenfreude, and possibly some personalities coming into it, and personality clashes coming into it, that only plays into that.
Personalities and egos involved in archaeological argument. My God, come on, Marc.
Surely not. Surely not. See my mini-series Archaeological Fallacies for more. No, no, but it in that sense, and that plays into the hand of someone who wants to continue the story of Gunung Padang as being a mystery and a great big question mark, as opposed to something which has not yet had adequate evidence recovered. What are your thoughts on that? Because and let me just lay out something as a thought of myself. So maybe it's food for thought for you as well. Like it or not, these conversations are going to happen. People are going to say, was it suppressed? Do archaeologists have a secret society or cabal that stops true evidence getting out there? And that stuff's going to make its way onto popular, onto forums of various sorts, but in particular onto places like, for example, Joe Rogan's podcast. I would be amazed if they hadn't already booked Graham Hancock, that is, again, to reappear to talk about this incident. Surely there needs to be a voice present there, or a voice that's willing to be present there, in order to have these conversations in a way which is understandable and accessible to those audiences. Or do you not think? I mean, what do you think?
I used to think that you have to just go out, debate these issues, debate these questions, and if you have the stronger argument, you'll win. Now, I no longer believe that.
No.
I no longer believe that because of the rise of populism, because of things like the Brexit vote, because of things like the election of Donald Trump and the continued success of Donald Trump as a public figure masquerading as a politician, which and through COVID denialism, climate change denialism, and so on. And very personally, working on the Buried Spitfires of Burma project, it is now clear to me, and it is, I'm quoting modern psychological research, that there is a sizable portion of the population that is unpersuadable in these matters. They are susceptible to conspiracy theories of all kinds. And if you try and persuade them otherwise, they see that as a confirmation of their original view, because if you try and persuade them the conspiracy doesn't exist, you're part of the conspiracy. Absolutely.
It's sort of 16 to 20%, isn't it, of the population?
Around that's the rough estimate. And again, and some will be extremely susceptible, some will be marginally less susceptible, but I either way, they're more inclined to believe the conspiracy than to believe the rational explanation. And if that's the case, again, I was reading a piece talking about the law this morning, and I think there's a lot, when you're talking about the law and legal representation, the work that solicitors and barristers do, you're trying to persuade, you're building a case and trying to persuade people. And the point this article was making is that barristers, when they're in training, they're taught to identify whether somebody is persuadable. And if somebody's persuadable, then they try and persuade them. If they're identified as not being persuadable, then they don't bother. You just present the case anyway, put the case out there, and what they think matters neither here nor there.
And so that, and I suppose that's extremely pertinent in a legal situation, because let's say Mike definitely killed Bob. Mike's wife might never believe that. And you can't argue her into a position of believing that, because she's loyal, because she's invested, because so on and so forth. There are reasons why people don't want to believe things that are laid out in front of them.
And so I think, Graham Hancock supporters will believe because they want to believe. Graham Hancock may believe what he writes, or he may believe what he writes will make him more money than actually entering that mainstream archaeology. I don't know. I'm not inside his head.
No.
I don't know his motivation, and I'm not going to speculate on it.
No.
But, the point is, whatever Flint or any of the other, Bill, us, any of the archaeologists that critique Graham Hancock's work say, it's not going to change his mind. He's not going to stop publishing his books.
No.
So all we can do is put the counter evidence out there. This, as you say, in a sense, he made the mistake of coming to play on the away pitch. And I
mean, you say it's a mistake, but I think
he wins either way.
I mean, he does win either way, but I think to his credit, the attempt, if we take it at face value and in good faith, I don't necessarily believe it was in good faith, but in good faith, he was trying to deliver something that archaeologists have been asking him for a long time. Arguably, it's just unfortunate that someone didn't understand or something else got in the way, and actually he didn't deliver the goods. So I mean I think that's being quite charitable there, but in that sense, we all have to remain open to having our minds changed with evidence. That's the crucial aspect here. So I'm not, as I was saying, I'm not closed to it. I just want there to be good evidence. And as you say, we can't speculate on someone else's mind and motivations. Although we can make a note of the fact that he's now a good few decades into this, and it has made him quite a lot of money. So
there is I won't quote it because I've not verified it personally, but there is a tweet doing the rounds at the moment with, allegedly from Mr. Hancock's agent offering him as a speaking as a guest to speak at events for a fair amount of money.
Okay, so £5.
I'd leave home for £5 right at the moment, given the way given the finances of UK
sandwich,
archaeology.
A bus ticket, I'm there.
Yeah, absolutely.
A buffet, cup of tea,
pickled egg, sausage roll, pickled egg,
Someone's brought some scones that they've baked. That's all the better, I once went to did an evening talk where they weren't quite sure what to bring, but they decided to bring champagne. Hey, why not? So we just
why do I not get asked to present at events like that?
Well, exactly. Yeah.
I might suggest it actually next time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My retainer is
actually, given my next is likely to be at the Young Archaeologists, a branch of the Young Archaeologists Club, I suspect that wouldn't be the case there. But
No. Strong cup of tea. Strong cup of tea.
Yes.
Well, I think that's that really. Again, we don't really want to descend into actual, as Hancock often accuses archaeologists of doing, being actual and ad hominem arguments. And this has been, I think, quite a good little episode for me to return on. I've quite enjoyed this conversation, and hopefully you guys at home have enjoyed the experiment that we're doing. And in this instance, this is, I suppose, an extension of that experiment where we haven't got an intricate investigated story to tell you or to report on, but we do have some facts, some journalistically verified facts, and then we have opinions. This is probably quite a good way to show that to you, and by my calculation, less than 40 minutes long. I mean, goodness me.
Life's too short, mate. Life's too short.
Thank you guys so much for watching at home. Thank you, Andy, for your time this week. We do have plans. Andy has plans for me. He wants to record something with me in the near future, and we'll be getting back on track with our plans for 2024 now that my voice is regularly back and fairly reliable once more. But yes, if you've enjoyed this, please do consider supporting us on Patreon. Do consider chucking Andy a coffee. Do not throw a coffee in his face, though. He will not thank you for it.
Or famously a glass of red wine, like a famous ITN newsreader did to a famous Conservative politician once at the party.
Yeah. I don't know, but again, champagne, depends on the circumstances. Anyway, do consider that, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.